everyone. This is George Verlaga, and I'd like to welcome you to session 2 of our Get It Done in 120 Days Writing and Publishing program. Okay, so let's recap a little bit. Have you told everyone in your network about your book yet? Second, have you started to network, or at least think about networking? If so, where have you been, or where are you planning to go? What type of event and why? Third, have you checked out who your competition is, or what kinds of titles exist in your subject area? Fourth, have you written your backstory yet, which is your why? And last but not least, have you decided to maybe write a blog and or a e-newsletter? So let's talk about the ways that you can make your book. There's 3 ways that you can book. One is to self-publish. So when you self-publish, you can produce everything yourself, obviously with a little bit of help from a team. You own the rights and you control everything. The other extreme is traditional publishing, wherein the production time is longer. It can take 2 years or more. The publishing house will request that they hold your rights, so you lose your rights, and they may totally change your book, meaning they may alter the cover, change the content. Basically, they own your book. And then there's the middle ground, which is hybrid publishing. So short to medium production time, because you won't be the only client. There will be a few, but not as many as a traditional publishing house. You can negotiate your rights. In most cases, you'll even get to keep your rights. And then your input will be respected when it comes to the cover design and the interior, or how much content will be kept or maybe edited. So my advice is act as if you are self-publishing, and if anywhere along the way you're approached by a hybrid publisher or a traditional publisher, I mean, that's totally up to you, but take note that there are pros and cons to getting or signing a contract with a traditional publisher. So act as if you'll organize everything yourself. It's always a good way to go. Okay, so here is a resource or list of hybrid publishers and self-publishing, or what used to be called vanity presses. So Figure One Publishing is one of the leading hybrid publishers. Influence Publishing is another one, and Promontory Press is one that I've used at least once before. So nothing but good things to say about Promontory. Obviously, you can try the others. And then if you would like to do this completely on your own, in other words, you want a project that manage this all by yourself, you're certainly free to do that. Some of the most commonly used publishing houses are Friesen Press, First Choice, and Cascadia Author Services. So how it works with self-publishing presses is it's kind of like an a la carte type of situation, where you can pick and choose whatever service you want to pay for or buy. So for example, if you want cover design done, or editing, or proofreading, any of the self-publishing presses will offer one or all of these services. But the hybrid publisher, they pretty much do all of these. All they have to do is turn over your manuscript, and they'll take over and design the cover, design the interior, edit that all for you. So it's a bit more convenient, but you give up a little bit of creative control to a hybrid publisher. Whereas with self-publishing, you call all the shots. Okay, so what about signing up with a traditional publisher and then getting an advance? So let's say that your MS or your manuscript is picked up by a traditional publisher. So what are the pros and cons? What happens? Well, first of all, you will have to sign an agreement where your rights will be turned over to the publisher, usually between 3 and 5 years. They'll specify it in the contract. So they own the rights, which means they can do whatever they want with the title and content. And then with regards to speed, you'll find that because traditional publishers have 50 or more pre-existing clients, it can sometimes take them a while to get to working on your book. So which is why it can take up to 2 or 3 years before you even see your book in print. So it's very slow, usually. And then every time you need a book or books, so if you need 20, 50, 100 or more, you actually have to buy your books from a traditional publishing house. They may offer you a bit of a discount since you're one of the authors, but it's almost like buying from a bookstore. And advances aren't that big, so unless you're really well known, well-known authors are usually offered anywhere from $100,000 or more, or even $50,000 or more. Cash advances for first-time, not very well-known authors start from about $5,000 and up. And again, there's those long timelines, which is 2 to 3 years before you see your book in print. So by then, your subject may already be stale. And then traditional publishing houses, their business models, the way it works is they will attend to those big names first, and then you, if you're not as well known, then you tend to come last, which is really not a good thing when it comes to promotion or marketing. And then, as with anything else, I think I mentioned during session 1 that the book is a business, which means that even if you do sign up with a traditional publisher and you get a publishing contract and even a bit of an advance, well, guess what? You still have to do your own marketing and platform building. Signing up with a traditional publisher doesn't mean that they'll do all of that for you. You'll still have to talk about your book, be on a stage, do all those lovely things associated with promoting a business. So why even bother with a traditional publishing house then? If it's a hassle and it causes a lot of delays. Well, some people still like to sign up with traditional and even hybrid publishers because, one, they can get into the bookstore chains. Okay, keep in mind that self-publishing houses or vanity presses usually don't have those connections to Chapters or Barnes & Noble in the US. So all a self-publishing or vanity press can get you is some links to Amazon, but you can even do that on your own. So the value of a traditional and a hybrid publisher is their connections and their ability to get you into large bookstore chains. Also, some of them will have ties to big newspapers like the New York Times. So if you want to be considered for review, and by the way, the New York Times is flooded with requests for reviews. They get about a couple of thousand books a week. So typically, traditional hybrid publishers are better connected and may have access to the New York Times. But that in no way is a guarantee that your book will be reviewed. And also, they can give you a heads up about upcoming book conferences, fairs, and contests, and even advise you on which to participate in. So that in a nutshell is one of the features and benefits that you can get from a traditional or a hybrid publisher. So what they cannot do for you, and what you have to do for yourself, is to get into Costco or a major retail chain like Walmart. That will still be up to you. If you want to get in corporate speaking, well, guess who's going to pick up the phone? It won't be them. That's going to be you as well. Okay, so just FYI for your info, here are some of the more notable awards, if you're interested, that you can join. So to be recognized or to get more speaking gigs, it's not really necessary to have an award. Some authors like it, some authors don't care. So if you do care a little bit about awards, here's 10 that I recommend. First is the Independent Publisher Book Awards. Second is Ben Franklin Awards. And third is Eric Hoffer. So the rest are kind of, you don't have to join all of them because it does cost money, anywhere from $80 and up to submit an application and submit your electronic manuscript. So it does take some effort and some time, and for the most part, they do require payment. So, if you do want to try for an award, definitely go for it. It can add to the prestige of your book, but you can still make a good and honest living without awards. So again, up to you. Okay, so if you're curious about CreateSpace, which is the publishing arm of Amazon, I've provided a link to that, which is www.thebookdesigner.com, which gives you instructions on how to upload your electronic manuscript onto CreateSpace. It's actually very straightforward. It's probably less than 10 steps. And essentially what it is, it's you just upload your electronic book to CreateSpace, and they take care of making sure that it's available for people to buy on Amazon.com, so that if someone wants to order your book on Amazon, CreateSpace is their publishing arm, and they provide hard copies, by the way. This is not just electronic. For that, that would be Kindle. So again, here's a link about why the pros and cons of getting your own ISBN versus letting Amazon get one for you. So long and short is that letting Amazon apply for your own ISBN is a convenience, but they become the publisher. So most people would recommend that you just get your own ISBN, even if you have to pay for it. That way, it's your ISBN. And then with Kindle, basically, if you want your book to be purely electronic, no hard copies, then you go to the Kindle link, which is also tied to CreateSpace. So here's what you should remember. CreateSpace is for hard copies. Kindle is for electronic copies. So they're two different and separate but related companies. Okay, so who are some people that you can start with? So if you want to consider some editing services, you can communicate with Ted Morrison. His email address is here. Jan Westendorp does cover and interior design. And Gilles Namour does websites. So these are just people that you can start inquiring about if you want to ask about editing, cover design, and websites. And here are some other names that you can consider as editors. So if you want to find out what editors charge, I've included the link below under newbieauthorsguide.com about the different types of editing and how much is usually charged for editing services. Okay, so for those of you who do not have websites or are thinking of creating one, I've included a list of what I would consider well-done or well-made websites. So one is Gillian Flynn, it's a female author, thisworldofdo.com, anthonyhorowitz.com, and anthonybeaver.com. So these are good places to start. I think they're eye-catching, they make it look credible, and you can pattern your own websites after these authors. And it may interest you to know that when some authors create their websites, there's actually, some of them use outlines or frames or skin that are pre-made, and then you just drop content. The reason for that is that it's a lot cheaper, and you can ask your website designer to use pre-existing skin from either studiopress.com or themeforest.net. So you can look at portfolio samples here and say, oh, you know what? This looks interesting to me. I'd like to use something like this. And you can also pattern your website after these 4 author that I've supplied here. And one thing I'd also like you to look at are these speaker websites. So what's the difference? Well, to me, once you're an author, most likely you'll go down the road of speaker. So that being the case, I think it's a great idea to position yourself as a speaker first and author second. Because a lot of people, anyway, will assume that as a speaker, you probably have a book. So if you're willing to, or you're considering going down this route, you may try and consider these 4 very well-made speaker websites. One is Start With Why, that's Simon Sinek, who's a TEDx speaker. So it's very clean, it's very simple. Positions Simon as a thought leader. Another prolific author is Seth Godin. So I've included the link to his website here. Again, it's very clean, it's very simple, but it's very authoritative. Jeremy Gooch is an innovation expert. So it's kind of a little busy, but it shows you all the links to news agencies that have interviewed him. So it makes him look very credible. The last is David Meerman Scott. So start with these. I recommend these over the author websites because if you're an author, you're just an author. But if you're a speaker, well, guess what? You could be a speaker and an author. So start with the speaker websites, and then compare these with the author websites, and then ask your webmaster or website designer about using pre-existing skins or themes, and whether that would make it a little less expensive to create your website. Okay, so now let's talk about parts of a book. Okay, so right now I've outlined 13, and I'm going to go through each and every one of them. Okay, so this is a sample of my 4th book, which is The Maverick Effect. So when you see the file that your cover designer gives you, he'll lay it out so that the front and back are visible, and also the spine. So you'll see the title in front, author, so there's the main title and the subtitle, and I was even able to squeeze a little bit of a testimonial or endorsement in front. And then I have 2 more at the back, 2 more endorsements, or what I call those back cover blurbs, and also a little bit of a summary or intro on what my book is about. You'll also find an imprint of my publisher, which is Promontory Press, and that little barcode there is for the price. So you'll see the title also on the spine, which kind of mirrors what's happening in front. So this is a professionally designed cover. My hybrid publisher Promontory did all of that for me, and of course they consulted me before they came out with this. Actually, orange was in my first choice, and even this title graphic with a figure of those heads with those arms swarming towards the letter I was also not my first choice. But after a lot of back and forth discussion, they made me see that this would probably resonate more with readers or audiences. And orange was supposedly a very striking and very bright color, it would be very eye-catching, while that swarm of people, which to me at first I thought they were bugs, because I wasn't too crazy about them. But eventually they made me see that this was actually a good idea. So when you completely self-publish on your own, you have no benefit of a second group of people telling you pros and cons. This is what we know based on our expertise. You're totally on your own making these decisions. But at least with a hybrid or traditional publishing team behind you, then there's that benefit of a second opinion. But of course, you can always get that second opinion elsewhere. So this is the cover on the other hand of my second book, which is called The Job Farmer. So it's all purely text. The guy who did this was not even a graphic designer, but he had an eye for design, and he knew how to use what's called InDesign software, which is what's used to design book covers and book interiors. So again, I think it looks very professional. The spine and the cover kind of mirror each other. Title, the subtitle at the top, instead of the bottom. Forward with the name of the person writing the forward for me. And at the back, back cover, you'll see some bullet points about features and benefits. You'll discover a little bit of an intro, what the book is about, benefit statement, and I have actually have four back cover blurbs of testimonials. So I was able to cram a little bit more into this book. And this book, by the way, this book's size is smaller than the Maverick Effect. So for a smaller amount of real estate, I was able to cram more text. Of course, you need sharper eyes to read all of it, and I'm not sure if some people's eyes will glaze over it because it's, some people would say it's a bit crowded, but again, to me, it's fine. But the thing is, I had to make all these decisions on my own because this book was completely self-published. But again, I do have a design background, so I can more or less tell whether something looks good or doesn't. So it's an okay, it's a completely adequate cover, but could it have been improved? Definitely. So you can see the name of my cover designer, Greg Lamb, and then there's an imprint there with a planet with rings. That's my own imprint. Which is Constellation Press, and then of course there's the barcode and all that. So it looks very looks professional. It's almost like anyone would assume that a traditional publishing house published it, and would never assume that it was self-published. Okay, let's look at those reviewer blurbs. So these are blurbs that go inside of your book. So these are similar to Amazon reviews, except that these encourage you to actually buy my book. So take a look at these at your leisure, and you can copy and paste these when you request for your own reviewer blurbs and say, hey, here's a sample. Please feel free to write something similar. So as you'll notice, these are very positive, glowing. So that's why I send my reviewer blurb requests to my top 300, 400 to 500 people in my network. People who will support me no matter what. So this title page goes inside your book. So same title as your outside cover, Maverick Effect, same subtitle, and the author and the imprint of your publishing house. So it could be a third party, or it could be your own made-up imprint. My suggestion for an imprint is to not use your surname, like instead of Vertilago Press, which looks very obviously like it belongs to you. Use some kind of neutral word like, I don't know, Hammer Press or Arrow Press. Just use a word that's not linked to your name. It's usually better. And copyright page, just take a look at this. Not a whole lot of information, but just enough in case people want to look at it. And then here's another example of a copyright page for the Job Farmer. A little bit more information. It even has a legal disclaimer. Reasonable efforts have been made by the author to provide current and accurate info to readers, but the book is not intended to be historically accurate. So yada yada yada. Plus a bit of info where you can find my book, my website, jobfarmer.com, and then my author website, ISBN, and all that. Then dedication page, which some would call acknowledgments. So acknowledge the important people in my life, such as my spouse, my parents, siblings. You can write whatever you want. You can make it as long or as short as you want. It's up to you. And of course, the forward page, which you may or may not have. So the forward, as you may or may not know, is supplied by a third party, hopefully someone who has a big name or is associated with a famous company or someone successful. And then their name, in this case, Don Morgan, the president of BNI Canada, wrote this for me. I put his name on my cover, forward by Don Morgan, president of BNI Canada. And he also happened to write 2 New York Times bestselling books. So I knew him because I was a member of BNI for 10 years. And I asked him to write this forward. So you can, again, pattern your own forward after this in case you happen to know someone who you'd like to feature as your forward writer. So table of contents, pretty straightforward. So again, I've given you just kind of a sample so that you can pattern your own table of contents after this. Introduction. So in this case, I didn't even write the word intro on it. I just put a title to kind of reel people in from the very beginning. And then for my second intro sample, I actually wrote the word introduction. Right? But whenever I write an introduction, I always write my why. In this case, why I wrote this book. In this case, why job seekers and business owners need to shift from hunting to farming. So for my book, The Job Farmer, I had to explain the title of my book and my reason for writing it. So these are two introduction samples. And you may or may not have this in your book, bibliography. So out of my 4 books, only one of them has a bibliography. And the reason for that is when I wrote about leadership, I felt that I needed to cite some references, some research papers, clinical studies. I didn't just want to talk about leadership from my own point of view. I wanted to talk about it from expert points of view, from doctors, health professionals, corporate leaders. So I actually have about 22 or 23 bibliography pages in the Maverick Effect. It's quite long. But again, Biblio is one of those parts that you may or may not choose to put in your own book. It's up to you. So advertisement and order page. So I recommend that when you put out a book, I highly recommend that you put your website, a number where you can be reached, so that if people like what they read, then they have a means to reach you in case they want to hire you as a speaker or as a workshop leader. So this is just a sample. You can create it in any manner that you wish. Just make sure that important information, like contact details, are included. And then part of building my own credibility is showing people what other books I've written. So in this case, I've shown my first and second book, kind of to position myself as an expert in soft skills. And then here was when I was offering my home study course called Singing Pretty. I included this in, I believe, my first book, The Contractor Lifestyle. So I had this there. So if you do have a course, feel free to advertise that as well. Okay, so for your first assignment for session 2, I'd like you to finalize who your target audience is. What's their age group, gender, type of work, how much do they make, interests, so on and so forth. And again, what pain or problem are you trying to solve? And then think about what makes you the best person to solve people's problems. And then try and imagine if this book were a day-long workshop, what would be the middle, beginning, and end part headings of that day-long workshop if it ran for 8 or 9 hours? Right? If it had 3 parts, what would you call the 3 headings or the 3 parts of your workshop, of your day-long workshop? For your second assignment, I'd like you to think about writing your intro. So when you write your intro, I'd like to start with why you wrote this book. So you present the problem or start with a question. Did you ever consider, and then write your problem. Right? Did you ever consider quality, leadership, whatever your issue is, right? And then include who the book was meant for. Who's your target market or your target audience? This book was written for people who, right? And talk about your backstory. I wrote this book because, when I was a kid, blah, 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 10 years ago, so on and so forth. Or, recently I realized that, right? And number 4, what would be the benefits of reading the book? When you finish reading this book, you will then put the benefit statement. So, then if you want, you can include the title and subtitle of your book. So the reason for being this exhaustive in the introduction is that sometimes some people, before buying a book, will read the intro. They want to connect with their why. So if your why resonates with them, and then they look through the table of contents, that's it. That's all they need to make a decision to buy your book. They don't need to read, part of your first chapter. They're sold on the intro. So that's why you try and kind of encompass what you're trying to do in your intro. And think about your dedication. Who are you dedicating this book to? So you can have a short and a long version. So I think I showed you a long version where I outlined my thanks to several members of my family and my wife. So that was kind of long. But you may have seen some books where it was only 2 or 3 lines to Abby, Michael, and Jordan. And then that's it. It's just 1 line. So it's up to you. You can make it as long or as short as you want. And fourth assignment, I'd like you to think about getting an ISBN number. So remember that in Canada, ISBNs are free. So you just have to, these are just one blog link, in this case, KarenWoodward.org, on how you can get a free ISBN. It's pretty easy, straightforward. If you're in the US, though, it's a whole different ballgame. If you go through Bowker, which can be reached at either isbn.org, which is the official site for getting ISBNs in the US, or bowker.com/products/ISBN-US.html. So long and short is you have to pay a minimum of 125 USD for the ISBN itself. And if you want that barcode, it's an extra $25, so for a total of 150. So 150 US to get an ISBN in the States, and for Canada it's free. So elsewhere it may most likely cost you something. And for some people who do want an ISBN, a standard ISBN, that's why they go to Amazon, because Amazon assigns ISBNs for you. Take note that there is a catch though if they do this. Although they do say that they will do it for free, Amazon in effect becomes your publisher. So if you want to publish through somebody else, for example, you may decide to sign up with a hybrid or traditional publisher, you may need to get a new ISBN for your book, or your new publisher may not be able to use Amazon's ISBN number, because that is unique to them. So there's pros and cons to getting your ISBN from Amazon. Okay, so assignment number 5, I'd like you to create some talks based on your book's content. So the reason for this is I'd like you to really thresh out, before we create your table of contents, I really like to thresh out your material in advance. Map it out in kind of a framework so that you can kind of see what your book's going to look like from start to finish. And I'd like you to think about your book in terms of courses. So let's pretend your book has 8 chapters, right? So I'd like you to create 8 individual separate courses that you're going to deliver, so at least 3 to about 5 bullet points each, and then map it out. So 8 times 5, or 8 times 3, so about 21 bullet points at least. So 8 for the main chapters, and an additional 3 to 5 under each bullet point. Pretend that you've been asked to deliver a workshop that's based on your entire book. So create a 1-day workshop, right? So if it's 8 chapters, it's 8 hours. If it's 10 chapters, it's 10 hours. If it's 12 chapters, it's 12 hours. If it's 6 chapters, it's 6 hours. And then for every hour, I'd like you to map out 3 to 5 main ideas. So I'd like you to imagine what you're going to say to an audience that's paid to come to listen to you to talk about your book. So if they came to listen to you talk about your book from start to finish, well, what are you going to tell them? So imagine that your book has been formatted into a talk. What would you be telling your audience or sharing with the audience based on the content of your book? So you can almost call this like a rough table of contents, because occasionally you will be asked to speak. for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, or even deliver a workshop. And I'm going to guess that a lot of that's going to be taken from your book. So I'm just asking you to do that in advance. And also consider this as an exercise in helping you figure out what you're going to write in advance. So the opposite of this is just basically going to your computer tomorrow without an outline or table of contents and just free associating. In other words, writing whatever comes into your head, then paying an editor an expensive amount of money to sort out your thoughts. So that's not the approach we're going to take. What we're going to do is the opposite. We're going to plan the book in advance very meticulously. And to help you do that, I want you to pretend that you are going to deliver a workshop about it. Okay, so for our 6th assignment, I'd like you to think about connecting with influencers and or strategic partners. So for every year, we have 52 weeks. And we're at the start of week 2, or the end of week 2. If we take a 2-week vacation, let's pretend we have a 50-week year. So for each of those weeks, I'd like you to think about finding a new joint venture partner. So one that you haven't met yet or don't know. So think about where you can meet them. Do you need to go to a meetup? Do you need to go to a business or a social networking event? So again, just as a review, these JV or joint venture partners are going to help you promote your book or create buzz for your book. So I'd like you to think about where you're going to go for the next year or the next 49 or 50 weeks, where you can find those list owners who have names, lists of 1,000 or more, who can help you create some serious word of mouth, right? Write down, and number 2, I'd like you to write down where you can connect with corporate decision makers who can help hire you as a speaker. So do you need to go to companies? Do you need to go to local or international associations or nonprofits? Do you need to go to community service group like a Rotary, Lions, or Kiwanis? Do you need to call speakers bureaus and sign up as a new kid on the block who wants to be on their stable of speakers and be given some speaking gigs? Obviously, you will need to share revenue with them. Typically, a number of them charge about a quarter of your speaking fees, or 25%. So, for example, if you charge $5,000, they'll take $1,250, which is why a lot of speaking bureaus prefer that you charge more, because if you charge $10,000 to $15,000, at least that's a significant amount of money for them. So a quarter of $10,000 is $2,500. So it's worth more of your time to represent you and look for speaking gigs for you than for someone who only charges $5,000. So take note that once you have the book, you have more of a right to charge $10,000 than someone who doesn't have it. And also start looking at local and international conferences related to your niche or your topic where you can speak at. Remember, there's tons happening in the city, in provinces or states nearby, and you can always cross the border to the country that's beside you, or you can go on an airplane and fly to Europe, Asia, or Africa. The sky's the limit. Once you have a book, you're free to speak anywhere. Okay, so let's talk about getting a TED Talk. So what's the big deal? Why think about TED or TEDx? By the way, TED is the mothership. TEDx are those slightly smaller conferences. Instead of having 5,000 people listen to you, you may have anywhere from 200 to 1,000. So the reason for getting on a TED or TEDx stage is that it's reputation making. Right? So the minute everyone in the world knows TED or TEDx. So the minute that's on your resume, that means, wow, you're serious. That means you're someone to be reckoned with and someone who is a professional, someone who probably charges for speaking. So consider that there's anywhere from half a dozen to a dozen of them in wherever town or big city that you live in. There are student-run TEDx's, to women's-only TEDx's, to industry-specific TEDx's, and of course the main TED happens in Vancouver, British Columbia. There's only one of those, right? But there's hundreds and thousands of TEDx's around the world. It's not easy to get into them. The fact that you managed to get a TEDx speaking gig is a huge deal. And if you happen to be doing a lot of flying, it may or may not be easier for you to get a TEDx somewhere else, because as a foreigner, you might be considered more exotic and more desirable. And then what the best thing for you to do really is just check out all of the TEDx happening in your area, and then find out what their selection criteria is. Most of the time they'll put it on the website. It's pretty straightforward. They'll ask you what your topic is, what makes you passionate about it, what makes you an expert on it, 3 of your biggest ideas. Usually they'll have about half a dozen questions. Very straightforward to answer. Then after that, it's a lottery. So you may or may not know the TEDx's theme in advance. Do take it seriously, answer it carefully, think about it, take a day or 2 or even 3 whenever you submit TEDx application. Anyone can. You don't have to be a published author to be a TEDx speaker. But keep in mind that the people who are accepted at TEDx, and especially TED, are very high caliber. So not all TEDx speakers actually have spoken before, but the quality of their ideas or their thinking is very high. So which is why you really have to consider your answer, because a lot of them will make their decision based on your application. So that's why you pretty much have to apply, in case you haven't spoken at TEDx yet, at all the TEDx groups in your town, because you may end up getting accepted in 1 or 2, or none, or you may have to wait a year or 2 before you get in. You see, it really is kind of joining a lottery. Your TEDx talk has to align with the TEDx organizer's theme, and you have to make sure that no one with the exact same topic as you got accepted last week. Because that happened to me. I found out that when I wanted to talk about leadership, there was like, oh shoot, that's too bad. We just got someone like that last week, and fortunately your talk is too similar, so we can't have 2 of those in the same TEDx conference, so why don't you try us next year? So really, all you need is to get into 1 TEDx, or the main TED mothership, which is preferable, of course. And then that's it. You don't have to do a TEDx every year unless you want, or you don't have to do 3 to 5 TEDx in your town. You just need 1, kind of just to enhance your reputation further. Okay, so for those of you who haven't gone through the process of getting speaking engagement with a company, a private corporation, a public one, I've included a script on what you need to say to a decision maker. So keep in mind that I don't believe really in sales. I believe though in matching and trying to look for a fit. I don't like selling to people. I like helping them buy, right? So you might say that it's the same difference, but you know what? It's opposite sides of the same coin. You're helping people purchase speaking services, yours, but you don't want to force something that they don't need. So you want to help them buy something that they do need and want. You want to sell them something that they don't want. So long and short is just introduce your name. My name is, let's say I'm an author and a speaker. So just writing a book makes you an author. You don't need to have finished your book. You can say I'm an author and my first book is coming out in, say the date. Just say you're working on your book. And then just ask, are you looking for speakers for your upcoming, whatever the case may be, conference, AGM, it's happening in, blank. So obviously a little bit of research goes a long way. Type out the name of the nonprofit of the company and then type conference, AGM, and invariably, half the time you'll find a date for a conference or AGMs that they've done previously. Then just ask about it. Oh, conference that you did last year, are you going to do that again this year? And for that, will you be looking for speakers, or are you in the process? So if they say, yes, we are in the process, or yes, that will be happening, but we're not doing that yet, then just ask, oh, so what is your process for selecting speakers? So they'll tell you, right? And I follow that up with, what do I need to be considered as a speaker? And they'll tell you whether you're a good fit or not a good fit. Some groups like the talk to be very technical or very industry specific. If you do a broader, more general talk that's not very industry specific, then you talk to a bunch of engineers or accountants, and they want a speaker who wants to talk about engineering or accounting related topics, then you may not be a good fit. So that's the way of helping people buy, right? You don't want to force a talk on people that don't need your topic. The last question is, well, what topics do your members like to listen to typically? And then they will tell you whether they want to listen to more general topics or more specific topics or more industry related topics. So our groups are like that. They want to just talk about something that impacts them. Well, some organizations, some companies want broader topics that kind of have mass appeal. So really, you have to find out all these things over the phone. So best practice would be to research the company or the association and the kind of event that they hold. Find out the dates when the conference and event is happening, and then find out what topics resonate. And then just use the script. Once you get used to it, you'll get the hang of it, and you'll be asking people the same 5 or 6 questions. And then you'll find that they will be very helpful and give you the information you need, because guess what? Companies and associations are always shopping for speakers all the time. And you may be the very one that they need. So the timing of your call may be perfect. So that's why ask questions. Never pitch. Okay, so again, I've included another bonus about, for those of you who are not that used to creating talks or presentations, for those of you that are, then no need for this bonus. But if you want to be impactful on the stage, that's why I asked you to create a workshop outline format. So how it usually works is every hour, it's usually most effective or memorable if you only present about 3 ideas. Anything more than that, people start to kind of forget. So that's why in my previous example, I could you present, for example, write an outline for a book that had, for instance, 8 chapters, right? And for every chapter, I wanted you to write 3 to 5 main ideas. So for your book, you can write as many main ideas under each chapter. You can write even 10 main ideas for every chapter. But for a talk, you can't present 10 ideas. You can only present around 3 if you want to be memorable and effective. So the workshop outline that I'm asking you to make is very effective because you're going to be asked to speak anyway at some point. And this will not only prepare you for that day, but it will prepare you to write your book. Because if you think in terms of a workshop, then what that's going to make you do is kind of think carefully about what you want to say. Here's something you may want to consider. How you sound on the stage should be exactly, and I mean exactly, the way you sound in your book. So if you're going to talk about your expertise on the stage at some point, I suggest that you think about what you will talk about before you even write your book. Because the initial impulse of many first-time authors is really to free associate. Sit down, write. And after about maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, they run out, and they go back the next day, they look at a blank screen for the next 2 or 3 hours with nothing. And the way to avoid that, and that is one of the worst things that can happen to any first-time author, is to map out your book in advance. That way you never get writer's block. So going back to speaking, one thing that you may want to keep in mind is that if you want to be relatable, especially entertaining, which are two things that you need to be. Because much as you would like to impact, transform, and educate people, don't forget that as a speaker, you also have to be entertaining. I think the education part is half, and then the entertaining part is the other half. So your talk needs to be informative, it needs to be inspirational, right? That's what entertaining part is, and transformative, meaning once people leave your talk, their behavior needs to have changed even just a little bit. That means they have to do something different. They have to now go out into the world and implement what you said. But for them to do that, they need to have been inspired. But inspiration doesn't just come out of education. They also have to have been entertained. Because if they're not entertained and they get bored, guess what? They fall asleep. They remember nothing. Which is why, if you're not entertaining, you need to start practicing. So keep in mind that effective speakers are merely just tell powerful stories. So although they may give you maybe 40 to about 70% content, they never forget to give examples. So pepper your talk, and especially your books, with a lot of examples. Because the examples will reinforce your main ideas. And here's also key. So you establish rapport and that being relatable within the first 2 or 3 minutes. In order to do that, a lot of speakers will usually introduce themselves for about 3 to 5 minutes at every talk that they give. Meaning they will tell their audience, well, this is who I am, this is why I'm here, and my backstory was, when I was a kid, or maybe 10 or 20 years ago, this is what happened to me. I was in this place, and then I turned my life around, and then this is why I'm here now. They usually give some kind of pain to gain story. That's what hooks the audience fairly early. But in order to do that, you kind of really have to dig deep down inside and then really go into yourself and go into your head and get into the heart of, well, why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you speaking on stage? Why are you writing your book? Right? Why do you want to change the world? Why do you want to do all that? What's the motivation? What happened to you when you were young, or what happened to you early in your career or in your business that motivated you to become a thought leader and speak in front of an audience and write a book? What happened in your life that got you to that aha moment of, you know what, I think I want to share this story, I want to change the world? Go to your reasons why I did that. And then when you introduce yourself, I mean, a lot of times you will be introduced, and a lot of times you will not be introduced. So during those times that you are not introduced, it's always nice to talk about your own story from your own perspective. This is why I'm here. This is why I'm talking to you. This is what I want you to do after this talk is over. Because this is what happened in my life. This is why I want you to benefit as well. And one way to gauge how effective you are is to look at your conversion rate. So this is a fancy term for measuring, for example, how many books that you've sold. So if, for example, if you go to a talk and you bring 15 or 20 books, just measure how many people went and how many books were sold. So if 30 people went and you sold 10 books, that's 33%. Most conversion rates that are 15% or higher are considered very good. Anything over 20% is kind of above average. If you're getting 50 to about 70 to 80%, you're really good. But consider anything above 15 to be really decent. 10% below, I mean, fairly okay. Obviously, if you didn't sell anything, that should give you some food for thought and maybe how you can improve your speaking. And if you're selling courses, even more important, because if you're not selling courses, then maybe you should look at your speaking. Anyway, that concludes session 2 of our How to Write and Publish a Book in 120 Days. Thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to speaking to you and getting together again during session 3. Thank you.